RFK Jr., the other day, some reports, I believe it was Friday, are saying he's going to drop out, canceling campaign events. He's going to endorse Trump. He comes out on X. He says, fake news. I'm in it to win it, blah, blah, blah. You brought this up earlier. It is interesting. What's the RFK Jr. factor? I've said all along that if he got the debate, he'd get a huge number. They're clearly freezing him out of the debates. If we have another debate, at all. I don't know if he'll be in it, but that clearly weakens his campaign. You were mentioning the polling that actually now RFK being in there is helping Harris, it seems like, which for a while it seems like it was helping Trump. So I'm an RFK Jr. fan. I like a lot of what he's about. What kind of impact do you think he will have here now that we've changed it up a little bit with Harris jumping in?
Well, look, I don't get every prediction right, certainly. I mean, I'm the one who said I thought Biden would do well in the first debate, but I do get some things right, and I think I'm going to be right about my RFK prediction that he's going to
But
get
hold on.
5% or less
But hold on.
if he stays in.
I said all along he had to debate.
You did make that caveat. I guess I knew he wouldn't get into the debates. I knew they wouldn't let him in. Although, look, assuming they have a September debate, which Trump said the other day that he wants to wait until the Democrats officially have a nominee, but I think they will debate. If they do, Kennedy will have a chance to get in there because the criteria is be on the state ballots with enough electoral votes you can win. He's going to do that. But then the other criteria is get 15% in some polls. He hasn't gotten 15% in a while. His support is fading, as I expected it would, as you get closer to the election. He's down in a lot of the latest polls, he's down at around 4 or 5%. I think the interesting thing about RFK isn't really about him. I'm sorry to all the RFK, true believers. He's not going to be a factor to win this race, but he is a factor in how the race unfolds. Very consistently in the Trump-Biden matchup, Trump did better by a point or two when you included RFK Jr. and the other independent third-party candidates, Cornel West, Jill Stein, the Libertarian candidate. And that makes sense because Trump kind of has a ceiling, and he got roughly between 46 and 47% in each of his two previous presidential runs. He won one and he lost one. In the one he won, the other candidates, third party and independent, got about 6% of the vote, which is pretty substantial. The one he lost, they got about 2%. But with Harris so far, and again, the caveat with her is it's very early. We don't have a lot of data. It seems to be slightly reversing. This is from Interactive Polls on X. They're at IA Polls 2022. I like to follow them because they tweet out a lot of polling. So 5 polls they have in this last week that measured both head-to-head Trump versus Harris and also with RFK Jr. and the other candidates in, right? In 4 of the 5, Trump led when it was head-to-head. But when you included RFK Jr. and the other candidates, Harris led in 3 of the 5. So in a New York Times Siena poll, for instance, head-to-head Trump +1, with RFK and the other candidates, Harris +1. Wall Street Journal head-to-head had Trump +2, RFK and the other candidates, that swung 3 points. It went from Trump +2 to Harris +1. Very interesting. I think part of the reasons RFK Jr. support has dropped in the last couple of weeks, especially with Harris now as the candidate, is because of what I was saying earlier. I think not a lot, but I think some number of people were kind of parking their vote with RFK Jr., or if they were far left, with Cornel West. If the people who were chanting Genocide Joe, I think some of them were parking their vote with Cornel West or Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate. And I think what has happened is Harris has gotten a lot of those people back. Trump's numbers really haven't dropped substantially. What has happened is Harris has improved on Biden by drawing more from the RFK Jr., Cornel West, Jill Stein contingent. She's taken some of those votes back. And I think that is an interesting thing to watch. So the conventional wisdom for me all along when it was Biden-Trump was the more people who vote third party and independent, that slightly helps Trump. But now, I don't know if that's true anymore. I think Harris has gotten a lot of those people back to the point where now I don't really know what RFK Jr.'s impact would be if he dropped out. I don't think it would be substantial, though, because his percentages keep going down and down. And I think the only way for that to change would be if he gets into the debate, which I don't think that he will. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he drops out, but I don't know if it would matter that much if he does.
Yeah, and if I can try to explain why I think this is happening, because I think I'm a decent example of this. And I think there are a lot of moderates, whether you're a true independent or you're a never Trumper or somebody who didn't like what Trump did around the election in January 6th, or if you're a Democrat who just doesn't always vote for Democrat no matter what. And I say myself, who's always voted for the Democrat for president, about 6 months ago, 7, 8 months, whenever it became very apparent that Joe Biden was losing it, I just could no longer support that. I just couldn't. No matter what, if Joe Biden would not have dropped out, there's no way I'm voting for the Democrat candidate this year because I'm watching Joe Biden deteriorate. It's obvious. Even before, I said this before the terrible debate disaster. It was clear he was too old for the next 4 years till he's 86 years old. So what I'm trying to say was I always vote for the Democrat. 6, 7 months ago, I just said I'm not going to vote for Biden. So at that time, I'm open to RFK Jr. I'm open to leaving the line blank. I'm not going to vote for Trump because he tried to overturn the election. Now that Kamala is in it, don't get me wrong. I'm still pissed at the process. I'm pissed at the fact that there wasn't a primary and that we really didn't get to see any type of electoral choosing, any debates, any town halls. I wanted to see that. I'm still kind of pissed that it's just Kamala and we have to go with Kamala. But at the end of the day, I wasn't going to vote for Joe Biden. I was thinking, okay, I'm flirting with RFK Jr. I'm flirting with not voting for anybody. But now I'm flirting with all three of those. I'm flirting with Kamala. I'm flirting with RFK Jr. I'm flirting with leaving it blank. Because also, I'm also just the whole process this time around has also bothered me. Just all of this, right?
Yeah.
Like not really getting to choose the Democrat nominee pisses me off. So I'm going to let the next 4 months play out before I figure out who I'm going to vote for. But now the Democrats are back in. Whereas if
Yes.
they'd have ran Biden, they were out for me. And I think they were out for a lot of Democrats who are just like, come on, man, Joe Biden is dying in front of our eyes.
Yeah, here's my theory on RFK Jr. that I want to be clear. I think we should all be kind of humble with the polling this last week because
Yeah.
everything has been crazy, not just with Biden dropping out, but you had in 3 weeks, you had the debate, you had the fallout from the debate, the assassination attempt, the RNC, the Vance pick, Biden dropping out, the party coalescing around Harris. So I want to give the polls a couple of weeks before I really start to say we've seen big shifts. But here's what I think my general thought about what's happening with RFK support. I think just to use crude numbers, and I'm not saying these are exactly right, but I always thought the RFK Jr. support fell into roughly three buckets that were kind of roughly equal sized. The first is the true believers. These are the people that love RFK and they would vote for RFK no matter who was running against him. They just like his vibe. That bucket isn't going to leave him no matter what. That's still why he's getting 4 or 5% in these polls. In the recent polling, he's getting 4 or 5%. I think that is his floor. Those are the people who are with him no matter what. But he was at 15%, 10 to 15 to even 20. So it was a lot more than that earlier in the cycle. And I think the other two buckets were the people who kind of like or lean Republican, are more conservative, especially culturally, that can't quite stomach Trump. I think that was one bucket. And then I think there was a third bucket that you're talking about, which is people who lean left but couldn't stomach Biden because he was too old, mainly. I think what has happened with Harris is she has unlocked the people in that bucket to now come back. And I think that is why she is polling better in the 3 or 5 way races than she is head to head, because those other two groups, they're not affected. The RFK Jr. true believers are still there. The people who really don't like Trump but are lean right are mainly still there. But now the Democrats who were parking their vote, or the lean Democrats in RFK, they have an excuse to come back. Same thing with Cornel West. The people who are really against the war, Harris has maybe a little bit more nuanced position in the Gaza conflict than Biden did. So I think it gives them a little bit of an excuse. And that's why Trump's numbers haven't really dropped, but Harris has improved on Biden's because she's pulling from those groups of people. And that is why I think if RFK Jr. stays in, The conventional wisdom for a long time was it slightly helps Trump. I think it will be the opposite. I think if he stays in, it will slightly help Harris. Now, will that be enough to make a difference? In the swing states, it might. Like we talked about, if this comes down to 20 or 30,000 votes in 2 or 3 states, everything makes a difference. The VP choice, if it's Shapiro, let's say Shapiro in Pennsylvania gives you a point, right? Let's say if Harris picked Mark Kelly in one world and he picks Shapiro in another, she picks Shapiro in another, and that makes a 1-point difference in Pennsylvania. That could be enough to swing that state and swing the election and get her to 270. So that is why that selection really could matter. And that's why something like RFK staying in could matter. Now, maybe RFK gets out and endorses Trump. And so maybe that bucket of lean Trump voters now goes home to Trump. But if he stays in, I think it on the margin helps Harris. I really do. I think it could swing at a point or two in these key states.
Let's end on that.